Who will be cleansed from their sins according to Hebrews 10? I am an ex-JW, that's Jehovah's Witness, who was taught that such new covenant promises are only for the 144,000.
So the solution to that particular problem is very easy. There's a beautiful definition of the 144,000 in Revelation 7, verse 14. John actually asks the question, who are these 144,000? I said to him, to the angel, I, John, my Lord, you know. And the angel said to me, these 144,000 are ones who come out of the Great Tribulation. Now, the Great Tribulation hasn't happened yet. So you cannot possibly be part of the 144,000 now. You cannot be defined by people who come out of a future Great Tribulation. That hasn't happened yet. So wait until the future Great Tribulation comes. Then you could speak of 144,000 literal Jews from the tribes and a great crowd of Gentiles. They are people who will come through that future Great Tribulation. It's a complete anachronism, a complete muddle of a time to say that anybody today could be part of the 144,000 or not part of the 145,000. It has a chronological marker there that's entirely clear.
So these promises are for who then in Hebrews 10? Because JWs are programmed, they are not under the new covenant. A lot of the promises in the New Testament do not belong to those who come knocking at your door, only for a select few. So can you just, for their sake, what are the requirements and what type of people are allowed under the new covenant?
I repeat, Jesus is the minister and servant of the new covenant. And so his words are the basis of the new covenant. Paul likewise said that Paul is the mediator of the new covenant, and it began with Messiah and the one who introduced him, the great John the Baptist.
So what do I, as a former JW, so how do I become part of this new covenant?
Well, you start by saying, I've been duped. I've been taken in. I think we can all attest to that too. In our ignorance, we were told things that are patently untrue. We were told things which in fact deny that we're Christians. If you go to the door, talk to the public and say, you, the one speaking at the door, are not actually anointed. You don't have the Spirit. You're simply telling the public and God and Jesus, who are also hearing you, that you're not a Christian. There is no Christianity without the Spirit of God. If any man does not, let me quote you, Paul, if anyone does not have the Spirit of Christ, he doesn't belong to Christ. So you repent of that. You say, my goodness, let me treat this as a good learning experience. Now I get it. Now let me repent and probably get baptized, start all over again, believing in the new covenant and the reception of the Spirit. You have to be born again to be a Christian. That's what Jesus plainly said. If you're not born again to receive the Spirit, if you're not born again by believing in the gospel of the kingdom, you haven't got started. You're building on a horribly false foundation, and you're likely then to be terribly disappointed when the judgment comes. So you say, I've got it wrong. We've all been wrong. Let's simply bow before the truth as it comes to us, embrace the truth, and simply realize the very simple fact. Jesus is the minister of the new covenant. Paul said of himself that he was the minister of the new covenant. You can look those verses up. Then you better get the words of the new covenant. They are the words of Jesus and then the words of Paul. There's a development there. Jesus did not give all of it at once, but he introduces the new covenant words in the Sermon on the Mount. He said, you've heard so-and-so, but I'm telling you something else. Paul develops that further. Paul is so radical. He says that physical circumcision is quite unnecessary. Paul is very radical. He says that weekly Sabbath keeping or new moons or holy days are absolutely nothing to do with the new covenant. If you're going to try to mix the old covenant in the new, you're bringing on yourself a fatal poison that needs to be rejected. No, you need the fullness of the new covenant, which is not the law of Moses in the letter, it's the law of Messiah. Paul himself said in a brilliant verse in 1 Corinthians 9:20, I, Paul, and he was a Jew and he was a Christian apostle, am not under the law. I, Paul, am not under the law. Now, if you want me to keep the Sabbath with you, to keep you happy for a while, I'll do it. If you want me not to eat pork in your home, that's just fine. I'll do that to accommodate you. He even circumcised Timothy because of the Jews, not because it was necessary. That's very clear.